Hi everyone! I often get questions in the comments about the spindle on my CNC. Its speed, its power and why I choose this particular model. So today seemed like a good moment to service one of my spindles and answer some of those questions at the same time. Let's start. This is a 2.2 kilowatt spindle capable of speeds up to 24,000 RPM with an ER20 collet, which allows me to use tools up to 13 millimeters in diameter. It's also fairly inexpensive Chinese spindle. Depending on where you live in the world, it usually costs around $200. Remember that number, it will become important later. Now, I'm not going to compare every possible spindle on the market. Instead, I'll explain why this particular one made sense for me. When I chose this spindle, the first thing I considered was availability. If something fails, can I quickly buy another one? Can it be serviced? Are spare parts, especially bearings, easy to find? For this spindle, the answer to all of those questions was yes. And for me that is critical, because this machine needs to keep working. A spindle that requires expensive repairs, rare spare parts, or long service delays simply doesn't work in my situation. The second factor is price. As I mentioned earlier, this spindle costs about $200, and because of that I treat it almost like I treat cutting tools. In other words, as a consumable item. I always keep one spare spindle on the shelf. If something catastrophic happens, burned windings, damaged bearing seats, or anything that requires serious repair, I simply replace the spindle. I've actually repaired one before after burning the starter windings. Yes, it can be rewound, but by the time you pay for rewinding, disassembly, reassembly and new bearings, the repair costs more than simply buying a new spindle. So after that experience, I stopped doing that. There is also another factor. If a 2.2 kilowatt Chinese spindle costs around $200, then when you move up to 3, 4 or 5 kilowatts, the price difference between Chinese spindle and the high-end European spindle becomes much smaller. For example, a spindle of similar power from a German manufacturer can cost around $4,000, depending on the configuration. That's roughly 20 times the price of this one. So the real question becomes, is it better built? Absolutely. But will it last 20 times longer? I doubt it. My work environment is extremely harsh. The spindle constantly operates in water, stone dust and abrasive slurry. Stone fragments mixed with the moisture create a very aggressive environment, and in those conditions almost every rotating component of the spindle is constantly exposed to wear. The third reason is the form factor. As you can see, the spindle is cylindrical. This allows me to easily adjust its position along the z-axis. In practice, this means I can increase my cutting depth simply by adjusting the spindle position. Depending on the size of the workpiece, that flexibility is extremely useful. More powerful spindles are often mounted in square housings with rigid mounts, which makes this kind of adjustment much more complicated. So the cylindrical design was another important factor. And finally, power. I tested several different spindles before setting on this one. In my case, I mostly do artistic stone carving and detailed work. Even if this spindle had 10 or 20 kilowatts, I would rarely use that power. On most of my other spindles, this aluminum nut has 2 holes for spanner wrench, but for some reason this one doesn't. So I have to resort to slightly more, let's say, barbaric methods to loosen it. And this particular nut turned out to be quite stubborn, so we'll give it a little heat. Just a small warning, this nut is aluminum, which means it absorbs heat very quickly. So you don't need to heat it too much, otherwise you risk damaging the hardened spindle shaft. Just a little gentle heat and that should do the trick. And now we can loosen it easily. When choosing a spindle, you must also consider the machine itself. Can your machine move the cutting tool fast enough? Can it hold the tool rigidly on the toolpath? In my case, the answer is no. Installing a much more powerful spindle on this machine would simply make no sense. Now, even though these spindles are relatively inexpensive, I still try to keep them running as long as possible. I don't like the idea of simply throwing them away if their life can be extended with a bit of maintenance. In my case, the only real service I perform on these spindles is replacing the bearings. And it's very important to do that before the bearings actually seize. Because if a bearing locks up at a full speed, what usually happens is the rotor keeps spinning in the starter, grinding into it and destroying the bearing seats. At that point, the bearings simply fall out of their seats and the spindle in that condition is usually not worth repairing. Machining new bearing seats or reworking the housing would cost more than buying a new spindle. So the key is catching the problem early. The frequency drive that powers this spindle allows me to monitor the current draw. I know that the idle current for this spindle is about 1 amp. If I start seeing that number increase, say 1.2 or 1.3 amps without load, that is usually the first indication that the bearings are wearing out. The second check is very simple. With the spindle turned off, I gently rotate the shaft by hand. If I feel tight spots or uneven resistance, if the shaft does not rotate perfectly smoothly, that is another sign the bearings are nearing the end of their life. And that's the moment when the spindle should be taken out of the service. This is exactly the situation we have here. From my experience, you can't replace bearings in these spindles forever. Usually a spindle survives 3 or 4 bearing replacements before the bearing seats becomes worn and the spindle has to be retired. This particular spindle has already gone through 2 bearing replacements. Today will be the third one. So let's see what condition it's actually in. Well, it's actually not that bad. A little bit of rust, a little bit of dust, but overall I've definitely seen worse. Rusty crusty. To remove the lower support bearings, it's usually better to use a proper bearing puller. But for the purpose of this video, I'm trying to keep the number of tools to a minimum. So I'll carefully tap them off using an aluminum hammer and a bronze drift, just to avoid damaging anything. These are high-speed angular contact bearings. If you try installing ordinary bearings here, they will overheat and fail almost immediately. These bearings are also installed as a matched pairs. 2 bearings at the top and 2 at the bottom. A matching pair means the bearings are manufactured to extremely tight tolerances so they share the load evenly. If you just install 2 random bearings, one of them may carry most of the load, while the other does almost nothing, and the spindle will fail quickly. Bearing orientation. Angular contact bearings can carry loads both radially and axially, but only in one axial direction. Because of that, they must be installed in a specific configuration. There are 2 common arrangements. DB back-to-back, where the bearings face opposite directions. This arrangement supports loads in both directions. And DT tandem, where both bearings face the same direction. This arrangement supports load only in one direction. On these bearings, there is usually a laser marking that helps identify the correct orientation. Another simple way to check is the inner race of the bearing. On one side it is thicker and on the other side it is narrower. And one more thing about the bearings themselves. These bearings are not cheap. A full set for this spindle, 2 larger bearings and 2 smaller ones, usually costs around $60, depending on the supplier and where you are located in the world. But in my experience, it is absolutely worth it. I have tried bearings from different manufacturers, including high-quality German and Japanese brands. If the bearings are not specifically designed for the high-speed operation around 24,000 RPM, and if they are not supplied as a matched pair, they will fail almost immediately. So using the correct high-speed matched bearings is essential for this type of spindle. These bearings are already starting to fit almost with a sliding fit. So this will most likely be either the last replacement or, if I'm lucky, I might be able to get one more bearing change out of this spindle. One important thing though, this work should be done in a reasonably clean environment. It doesn't have to be sterile, but you definitely don't want abrasive dust or debris getting inside the spindle. The only custom tool I made for this job is this small sleeve made from plastic. It allows me to press the bearings in and out gently without damaging the races. And one last thing to remember. This thread that holds the upper bearing is left-handed, so everything works in reverse. Turning it clockwise loosens it and counterclockwise tightens it. So don't try forcing it the wrong way. There is one more thing to keep in mind when servicing these spindles. To reach the upper bearings, you will need to disconnect the wires that go to the power connector. Make sure you remember the order of those wires. On the spindle housing, there is an arrow that indicates the correct rotation direction when the spindle receives a forward command. Technically, this is not critical, because on the frequency drive you can always switch between forward and reverse. However, if your spindle is controlled directly by G-code commands, the direction of rotation becomes important for the cutting process, whether you are using conventional or climb cutting. So I try to keep the wiring order exactly as it was. If you accidentally swap the wires, the spindle will simply rotate in the opposite direction. In that case, nothing serious happens, just swap any 2 wires and the direction will change. I simply check that the spindle rotates in the direction indicated by the arrow on the housing. One last thing before putting the spindle back into service. Once everything is assembled and the shaft rotates smoothly by hand, I don't immediately start machining. Instead, I perform a break-in procedure for the new bearings. I connect the spindle and run it for a few hours without any load. First, I run it about 30 minutes at around 3000 RPM. Then I increase the speed to 6000 RPM. After that to 10,000 RPM. And I continue gradually increasing the speed until I reach 20,000 RPM, usually running each stage for about 20-30 minutes. During this process, I constantly check the temperature of the spindle. It should only feel slightly warm to the touch. If the spindle starts getting hot, it may mean something was assembled incorrectly, or the bearings simply need a bit more time to settle at lower speeds. So my advice is simple. After installing new bearings, don't rush to start machining immediately. Spend a few hours running the spindle in first. It will significantly extend the life of the bearings and the spindle itself. And one final piece of advice from my own experience. Even though this spindle is rated for 24,000 RPM, I would recommend it avoiding those speeds unless it is absolutely necessary. For most finishing operations with small tools, I usually run the spindle at around 18,000 RPM, and that is more than enough. Simply avoiding the very top of the spindle's speed range can significantly extend the life of the bearings and the spindle itself. So, I hope I managed to answer at least some of the questions about this spindle. If you still have any questions or I forgot to mention something, please leave them in the comments, I try to answer them all. For now, our spindle is serviced, assembled and ready to go back to work. The whole job took about an hour. As you can see, the whole process is not so complicated, you just have to be careful and work patiently. It also requires only minimum amount of tools that almost everyone already has in their workshop. So overall, this is fairly straightforward maintenance job. I hope this video was useful for someone. Meanwhile, thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.